A lot of people who travel full-time end up wanting to create a blog to share their travel experiences. So this week I thought I'd share some ideas on how to start that travel blog. I started mine in 2018 when I started my own travels at heatherbegins.com, and it has grown and evolved from there. So I'm sharing my expertise. And on this episode, I'm going to try and hit a lot of different points, but stay fairly high level because this can get definitely overwhelming. If I were to go into each segment in depth, it would be its own episode. So let's start with, what platform do you use? Like, how do you even actually start a blog? So, well, you need to figure out where do you want to house this? There are popular sites like WordPress, blogger.com, Medium, Wix.com. And as you're looking at your options, you want to think about, do you want a website effectively, which has a blog page that you can expand on later? So say you're thinking forward and maybe if you love traveling and you're like, maybe one day I'll make some merchandise, or maybe I'll want to have an Amazon store or something. A website might be a great way to showcase your blog and also down the road add on other pages. Or do you just not want to be bothered with all that, and do you just want a landing page for your blog and focus only on the blog itself? So some important considerations. Then, of course, there's probably the hardest part is picking a name for your blog. And this is sort of a grueling process. If you have a name that plays well with traveling, then obviously go for it. But otherwise, most of the clever sounding names about traveling full-time, living nomadically, gap years, sabbaticals, all those things, those have already been taken. So I suggest you brainstorm and make a good list of 30 to 50 options, because when you go, what you want to do when you pick that name is you then need to figure out whatever platform you've chosen. Are you going to do the free version, or are you going to pay for the domain name? Now, paying for the domain name has the advantage that if you, like, I picked heatherbegins.com, so I own that domain and nobody else can have it. So the second part of the equation is, are you going to pay for the hosting of your blog, which can be very expensive, or are you going to do the free version? So if you do a free version, you have a name like wordpress.com/heatherbegins or something like that. Whereas if you pay for your own hosting, that's where you can connect your domain name, in my case, heatherbegins.com, and then that's what the world sees. So that's the advantage and disadvantage of the free versus the paid plan. Now, there's nothing saying that you can't do a free version like wordpress.com/heatherbegins and pay for a domain, which will run you on average like $11 to $15 a year, I believe. After that, you can forward the domain to your free site, right? So you can tell everyone, hey, my website is heatherbegins.com, but when they go there, they get forwarded to wordpress.com/heatherbegins. So you have a lot of options, and depending on your budget, I'm just trying to hit a bunch of those options that you can consider. Next, you want to think about your theme. And in my experience, this develops over time. So are you thinking about writing those typical travel blogs where each place you go, you talk about where you stayed, the activities you did, and tell readers, how to find these places and give them links to those places and experiences? Or are you going to do some other aspect of travel? Because, some people just want to kind of have a diary, if you will. And there's so many different themes you can pick, and there may be a reason for your journey. It's good if you can think about a theme, and even if that theme changes a year down the road, that's fine. You can just update it then, but just something to consider. Now, The next thing to think about is when you travel around the world, Wi-Fi speed varies immensely. So I remember when I first started my blog, I was in Costa Rica, and you need to think about whether you're using a laptop as you travel or an iPad or something else like a tablet, because I use WordPress, and I installed the Divi theme on my self-hosted blog. So here I am in Costa Rica where the Wi-Fi is terrible on my iPad, which didn't play well with my theme that I had chosen. And there's no way I'm going to be able to update the theme when I can barely get the page to load. And then you got to upload photos. So this is one of the most grueling parts of having a travel blog, is dealing with all the different Wi-Fi speeds and your technology. So I would say, knowing what I know now, travel with a laptop and choose. So the laptop will help immensely with the uploading, but you'll probably want to, you might want to check out Wi-Fi speeds in the places you're traveling to. And depending on the frequency that you're posting, and I'll mention that more in a moment, you may need to suss out kind of like, okay, well, it looks like I can get to this destination where I'll have good Wi-Fi, so I can maybe pre-post and pre-schedule. That's something else you can do. You can pre-schedule 3 weeks of blogs when you have good Wi-Fi as a workaround. Next, you'll want to think about goals. So are you trying to monetize with your blog, or do you just want to offer more like a diary of your travels? A lot of people think of the blogging as, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to share my journey with friends and family, and that's all I'm thinking about. Other people think, oh no, I want to be able to make money while I travel, and this blog is going to be my way of making that money. So I will tell you quite honestly, monetizing the blog is really hard. So unless you have a post that goes viral, and I hope you do, which means you're really focused on social media sharing, and it's a lot of work, it can take years to make money from the blog itself. Somebody that interviewed me on a travel podcast once said to me, he said, do you know how you get to be a famous travel blogger? I said, no, I don't. He said, first, get famous. Second, start a blog. And I think he's right. So if you are wanting to make money from your blog as the core goal, then you might want to consider something like Substack, which allows you to sort of be behind a paywall. So people can get sort of a glimpse of each post, but in order to see the whole thing, they have to become a subscriber. To become a subscriber, they have to pay a few dollars a month. And look, I know people that have their Substack, their subscriptions are, $3 to $10 a month, and they get 100 subscribers. Well, 100 subscribers, at $3, right? It's a few $100s. You get 1,000 subscribers, $3,000. So it can happen. It's still going to be work. And this goes back to the other question. Your Substack is just going to be the blog. That's all that's going to be there. If you wanted more of a fully accessible website where you can have plugins and do all kinds of cool stuff, that brings you back to the website, right? So again, this is why you need to think about your goal and which of these platforms is best for your goals. What about making money then from the website? So like I mentioned, that's really hard to do unless you go viral. So this is why you need to think about, is the blog for joy or is it for money? And so if it's for money, typically, since the blog posts themselves may not be what makes you wealthy, this is where what comes in is those extra pages you can put on the website for things like an Amazon store or affiliate codes, which you do need to disclose. This is where you start kind of thinking about, well, how can I have products or services down the road that people might buy from me and have extra pages for those. Next, in order to get the traffic to you, you think about keywords. And this is a whole can of worms, so I'm really going to gloss over this. But again, this requires a lot of research and some in-depth education. And look, when I first started, of course, Google, right? We wanted to SEO. You heard SEO, everything has to be SEO optimized for Google. But now we've got ChatGPT and Google Gemini and AI. So now it's about optimizing content for the AI bots. But here's the other thing to consider. AI, in my opinion, while it has some excellent uses, and I do think it's worth partnering with AI and learning more about it, I also consider it a version of plagiarism. And it's the worst kind of plagiarism in the case of blogs, because it robs from us to give other people information and doesn't even cite us as a source. I think it's getting better about that, but do consider that when you're doing free blog content, you're also kind of giving stuff away for free that you're not even going to get recognition for in the case of optimizing for AI. So keep that in mind. Final point I'm going to cover on today's podcast is frequency. It's helpful if you think about how often are you going to post so that your readers can get used to coming to your blog and knowing like every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, there's a new blog post. Maybe you're someone when I first started, I was writing so much. I wrote like 3 blog posts a week, maybe even more. And then over time, as I got more and more into like the world, because the journey for me, my first year was so internal and introspective. That first year, I was just writing all the time. And then as I got more into the outer perspective, I was participating more in the world around me and spending a little less time blogging. So then it became sort of 2 blog posts a week. Then it was 1 blog post a week. And eventually even less. So there's no rule. It's your blog. You can do whatever you want. But I found it helpful to hold myself accountable, especially when I started doing fewer posts, so that, I was like, oh, shoot, it's Monday and I got to get my post up for Tuesday at 3 p.m. That helped me be accountable to and get the motivation to write the blog post. So that's up to you. There's no set rule. YouTube will tell you like you should be posting at least 1 video a week to get, your audience. And look, again, are you monetizing or are you doing this for joy? Because if you're doing it for joy, then write when you're joyful and you want to do it. If you're doing it for money, well, then you need to consider that. So that's where all of this plays together. So I know this was a lot of information, but hopefully it gives you some thinking points so you have an idea of where to start your blog and how to do it, and then think about your goals for doing it and get started. I also wanted to mention, I recently updated my top tier program called Money for Travel Bootcamp with a new module, because I know the biggest question I'm asked is how on earth do we all afford to travel full time? So I added a module with some insights on with the rising prices that we're all experiencing due to kind of events all over the world. How can you afford full-time travel? So if you're interested in knowing that, definitely check out Money for Travel Bootcamp. I will put the link in the show notes, and have a great week, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Take care.